Brick by brick, fantasy piece by fantasy piece, we're taking your team to the top of your fantasy league. On the latest edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, we got to dig deep into everything going on across the league that's impacting your squad. Edmonton Oilers sliding. Are the Preds big sellers? The Blackhawks have a lot going on. And of course, Sens, are they down real bad? We'll talk about it all, including big-time bets on the Thursday episode. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back, baby, in the official lab for daily fantasy hockey takes, betting breakdowns, and all of the NHL news that you need to get this fantasy paper. It's the latest edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast with Steele and Flip. Shout out to the everydayers holding us down, making us your first listen every single day. You can find us across all platforms you find your favorite and hottest content. Shout out to the Locked On Network, a piece that we are proud to be a part of, Steele. You know we got our ups and downs, but we still show love where it's due. And for now, we've got a lot of attention to be due to a number of topics across the league. We'll get to the Sens. I'm excited to talk about that because you know how I like teams that we don't like sliding. That's nice for us. Chicago Blackhawks, this is a mess, but there's fantasy value to be had and takes to break down the Nashville Predators. My goodness me. Somehow getting messier. Let's start, though, with the Edmonton Oilers. I don't know if we've ever kept track, Steele, of teams that we've spoken about the most over the 3 years that you and I have been doing this now together. The Edmonton Oilers have got to be near the top. Fantasy,
they're at the
news,
top.
Whatever. Once again, the topic at hand with this team, shocker, it's the goaltending. What do you think is going to happen with this team? What are you seeing with the fantasy value in Stuart Skinner or otherwise?
I honestly think the Four Nations face-off, if it was bad for anybody, it was bad for Stuart Skinner because he didn't need the time off. He was playing great. You take a week and a half of hockey away from him, he starts to relax a little bit. He gets a little complacent. And look at what has happened for the Edmonton Oilers since returning from the break. 3 ugly losses. And I know there's some really good teams in the Tampa Bay Lightning and Washington Capitals, but a 6-3 loss to the Philadelphia Flyers, a 7-3 loss to the Washington Capitals, a 4-1 loss to the Tampa Bay Lightning. It's embarrassing. The hockey has not been good enough. The goaltending has not been good enough. I believe I said that to you as well. Stuart Skinner might come out of this looking real bad because he has looked really bad in the 2 games he has started so far after this break. And the Edmonton Oilers, while they're still in a good position, second place in the Pacific Division, holding that home ice advantage over the LA Kings right now, a team that they play really well against, a team they play really well against in the postseason. The LA Kings have 2 games in hand and they're only 2 points back. Somehow, if the LA Kings get that second place in the Pacific, it could be bad for the Edmonton Oilers because of how well the LA Kings play at home this season so far. And I know, again, the history, they've dominated the Kings over the last 3 seasons, but there could be a page that's being turned right now if that is the case. Darnell Nurse as well. He is out for the Edmonton Oilers. He will miss Thursday's game. He could be out for a little bit as well. I don't know the extent of the injury or the timeline of what's going on, but again, we've talked about replacing some injured defensemen. We're going to talk about Roman Josi and the Nashville Predators. Hit the waiver wire, put Darnell Nurse on the IR, pick somebody else up in his place because you're going to need all the help you can get heading into the postseason.
Evan Bouchard, Matthias Ekholm owners, you're going to see a bit of an uptick in ice time and potentially production just by de facto that, Darnell Nurse, I know, is not a guy that you exactly draft for a ton of offensive production. He is a very, very solid fantasy asset. Frustrating in terms of the league on the ice, how much he's paid. Can he go on blips of time where he makes some really bad decisions? For sure. Peripherally, he's solid. I always like the Darnell Nurse on my team because he can really explode at times with a couple of goals, a fight, and a whole bunch of periffs. So a big hole here for the Edmonton Oilers, even if it's just day-to-day, but to stay focused on the goaltending and just this team in general. kudos due to this blue line steal. They allow the 7th least shots against per game this year at 27. This is all on Stuart Skinner over the last couple of
Yeah,
games, in my
it is.
opinion. And it all comes down to this for me. Number one, I realize I can only count on Stuart Skinner in a league that is a straight points league, or he is your guy to get that win category, because otherwise his numbers are never really that sexy. And this year is a perfect example. 2.84 goals against, his save percentage 898. I know his career average is 907. It comes down to this for me with this player steal. And I think you've heard this from me a lot about Stuart Skinner, actually about a whole bunch of goaltenders. It's up here between the ears for Stuart Skinner. The confidence, it wavers. You saw him gain confidence last playoffs, bounce back and really show what he can do, but he can't stay consistently confident in the cage. And that to me is what you've seen over the last couple of games.
Yeah.
Actually, all the way back to the last 5 games, I would say overall, he's been pretty shaky. This is once again the same old song and dance with the Oilers, but maybe they're not so concerned given that this happened last year, it happened the year before, and they're still knocking on the door in the Western Conference deal as one of the best teams going. So fantasy-wise, be very careful here. I could see Calvin Pickard picking up a few more pieces of these starts. Hey, if it gets off the rails too far, they'll turn to Calvin Pickard. I'm not saying right away, but he's shown that he can at times be that fill-in, even if it's a short game-to-game basis. But both of those situations don't make me feel very good.
Not sure you want Pickard going into the playoffs.
No.
You really need Stuart Skinner on his game. And I know Stan Bowman has said that they're not in the goalie market heading into the trade deadline. But I mean, John Gibson being available, he's out there. Who knows? I know. I'm throwing some predictions, some mock trades potential. But again, you would want, you would want some backup goaltending there. And again, I don't think Pickard's the one to step up to the call. And Stuart Skinner just been very shaky, like you said. We're going to get to the Nashville Predators, of course, Chicago Blackhawks and Ottawa Senators in the next segment. Nashville Predators, injuries, Barry Trotz making it known. If you don't want to be here, I will send you away.
Hey, Nashville, one of those destination cities apparently still headed into this season. If Barry Trotz keeps taking pot shots in the media, on radio, I don't know if I want to be going there. We'll go there the rest of this episode, though, and continue to break down all of that news that you need. Tap into the channel, like, subscribe. Don't forget to drop us a 5-star written review wherever you guys are at. The feedback to Steele and I, it's paramount. It helps us get better, and that means your squads get better. We'll also wrap the show with big-time bets. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Trade Coffee. You know, I like a good cup of Joe in the morning, Steele. And if you're like me, mornings have to start with a quality cup, just like Trade Coffee. I got tired of setting up the grocery store brands. They weren't cutting it. That's why I turned to Trade. And let me tell you, this coffee is next level, Steele. I've been over to Italy. I've had some delicious coffee. This stuff really is next level. The #1 specialty coffee marketplace in the U.S., bringing you fresh coffee from 50 of the country's top roasters. Their experts have taste tested thousands of coffees, curating over 450 amazing roasts. Whether you're new to coffee or know exactly what you like, they'll handpick the perfect match for you. Get that first bag. Trade will replace it for free if you didn't like it just right. Right now, Trade is exclusively offering our listeners 40% off your first order at drinktrade.com/lockedon. That's drinktrade, TRADE.com/lockedon for 40% off your first order. drinktrade.com/lockedon. Try it today.
Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning, 7 p.m. actually throughout this week, but we will be getting back on schedule in the month of March.
Yes, sir.
And look, the Nashville Predators, they've been down bad all season long. And Barry Trotz, he's made it known that if you don't want to be here, he has no problem facilitating a trade and sending you out of Nashville. And there's already a few guys that have been on the trade bait board. When you look at their roster, Ryan O'Reilly, Gustav Nyquist, Luke Shen as well on the blue line. There's a few other guys that could potentially be put in that on
Did
that
you say
list
Ryan
as well.
O'Reilly?
I said Ryan O'Reilly. Yeah, Ryan O'Reilly's on that list too.
Yep.
I mean, it's just ugly hockey. And Luke Shen said it
Mhm.
best. I mean, they just can't score. They're one of the worst teams in goals
Yes.
for goals in the goal differential category.
Mhm.
Defensively, they've been terrible. In the month of February, they've won 2 games, one against Buffalo and one against Colorado. Yeah, okay. But other than that, they're getting absolutely blown out of the water. A 5-2
Mm.
loss to Ottawa, a 6-2 loss to Chicago, and most recently 5-0 to the Devils and a 4-1 loss to the Florida Panthers. It's not getting any better, any easier tonight against the Winnipeg Jets. They're going to be without Roman Josi too. So this makes it even worse for the
Yeah.
Nashville Predators for the rest of the season. They're big time sellers coming the trade deadline. I don't think Barry Trotz has any problem putting his fingerprints on this organization as he's at the helm now.
A lot of GMs usually say these kinds of things to, shake
Get a little
things up,
spark or something.
get a little spark, perhaps try things differently. I don't think this is a threat. I think this is a promise. I think this is what this team might need. Look, sometimes these things don't work, Steele. Just adding in good pieces. Think about it, though. Maybe it makes sense. Steven Stamkos didn't really want to leave Tampa Bay. He knew what was good for him, home cooking. And as much as I would actually probably myself, knowing me, love living in Nashville, not for everybody. And I'm not going to try and speculate here, but it just doesn't always work out. And take this in. Only the Anaheim Ducks have scored less goals. The San Jose Sharks have scored more. The Blackhawks, Islanders, come on now. That's going to be a problem. And then you slap yourself into the worst defensive metrics. It just, you don't need a Pulitzer Prize here, Steele, to figure it out that this is a team you got to get away from. We've said it for the whole season. Now it's a fact. And now one of their only relevant fantasy pieces is also out. So quickly, let's talk about Josi. 38 points in 53 games, Steele. Very un-Josi-esque. However, that's just how good he is. Still relevant. 38 points in 53 games from a 34-year-old defenseman. You definitely, who gets 95 block shots and 42 hits thrown in there, minus 26 on the plus minus isn't so sexy. This guy is still a hole to fill. And yeah, there are going to be a lot of fantasy GMs out there who probably took him off the board right after that big trio this year of Makar, Hughes, Bouchard. I wouldn't have even blamed you if Josi was the third D-man off the fantasy draft boards, but it's going to be a hole you have to fill.
Massive hole. And like with Darnell Nurse, we've talked about all these guys that you can pick up off the waiver wire: Jackson Lacombe, Bowen Byram, Racco Gudis, Middleton to fill in those gaps. As of right now, again, we don't know what the timeline of the injuries. As of right now, they're both out for Thursday's night game. Let's get over the Chicago Blackhawks because it doesn't get any prettier in Chicago from Nashville. And I feel terrible. I know we've talked about this. We don't have to spend a lot of time on this discussion, but Connor Bedard is just looking so frustrated. He's looking depleted. There's no confidence right now, not hit in his own game, but confidence in the team. And I think at this point, as young as he is, he needs to be a part of some of the decisions moving forward. If he's going to be the franchise player for the next 10, 15 years, he needs to know where the team is going. And I know Seth Jones has spoken out in recent games about the frustrations he's been dealing with, putting himself pretty much on the trade bait board. I want to contend, as I get later into my career right now, Connor Bedard needs help. This team is just as bad as the Nashville Predators, maybe a little bit better, but that's not saying much. There's no talent around Connor Bedard. For Kyle Davidson, the general manager of the Chicago Blackhawks, he has a lot of work to do to really change this franchise around and give Connor Bedard the supporting cast that he needs and deserves. Because, I mean, Chicago, he leads the team with 49 points in 58 games. You have Teuvo Teravainen, who's been pretty decent as well. A good season from Ryan Donato. After that, there's really no value on this team. And even with Teravainen and Donato, they're still rostered under 20, 25%. Those are deeper cut players right there. They need some help. There's some really good unrestricted free agents going into the offseason. They need to throw the money at a supporting cast for Connor Bedard.
In a hurry, because this can impact the development of a young player. Is he probably going to still be the generational talent that we've mentioned? For sure. Has he been probably a headache for fantasy GMs to deal with this season? Most definitely, because you probably had to take him late second round, Steele, maybe early third round. I know he was up there going off of boards pretty early in NHL fantasy drafts this season. Maybe the second round is a reach, but third round I could have for sure seen. This is the takeaway I have for this before we move on to the Sens very quickly. Wrap with bets. Don't miss tomorrow's episode. We'll be back. A little bit of a later post. You know what it is. I am very, very intrigued here with Seth Jones. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, this guy has, disappointed, whatever, underachieved, all of these narratives. We have really looked at Seth Jones in a very aggressive and high standard lens because it's not his fault. He got paid $9.5 million per year and then kind of teetered off and then went to Chicago, which is an absolute pit for defensemen. If this guy goes, I don't know if you read this, the rumor that's heating up is the Florida Panthers. I don't know how that works in terms of salary. If that guy goes to the Florida Panthers, Steele, must add. Immediately must add, because all of those doo-doo defensive metrics are going to be immediately rectified, and maybe he can get back to doing what he did at the start of his career and really impacting the game a little bit more at the offensive end. Is it a stretch? Sure. Is it going to happen? We don't know, but I've been talking about Seth Jones now, I think, for the last couple of weeks as maybe that top guy that I like. If he gets moved, that's fantasy boom. I got to bring it up once again because the writing is on the wall, and if you can sneak in and swoop in on this guy now, I think it's going to pay off for you big time down the stretch.
I saw something online that Aaron Ekblad could be a surprise player traded at the deadline as well. So maybe that has something to do with the rumor with Seth Jones and Florida Panthers. I don't know how that would work again, the $9.5 million, but yeah, it's been frustrating for Chicago fans. It's been frustrating for Connor Bedard. I don't know if you've seen that clip going around of him in the penalty box in that game against the Columbus Blue Jackets. He looks like he's about to cry. I mean, what do you do at this point when your team's just that down bad? Same could be said for the Ottawa Senators. We're going to get to that after the break alongside big time bets. Lots of games over the weekend, and you know where to tune in. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. That's my favorite feature about FanDuel, the same-game parlays. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps me in every moment of the game, and it's always exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I miss my chance. Plus, the app, it's super easy to use, safe and secure, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And once again, from both Flip Livingstone and Steel Road, and thank you so much for tuning into the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, making it your first listen every single day. We really do appreciate all that love and support. Hit the subscribe button, the follow button. Again, we're so close to 2,000 subscribers.
True.
We could really use that nudge right now. So thank you so much. Share with your friends and family out there. Flip, the Ottawa Senators are sliding. And as much as I love to see it,
that's too bad.
As much as I love to see them sliding in the standings, you and I have, even as much as we don't like the Ottawa Senators because of their fan base, we still have given them a lot of credit for being a competitive team, for being a playoff bubble team as well, and having all these guys to really turn their organization around. And they're currently on a 5-game losing streak, 2 points out of a wild card spot right now. And I mean, they have been dealt some pretty bad hands with some of the recent injuries. Shane Pinto, Brady Tkachuk, Josh Norris as well. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I mean, at this point, the deadline right around the corner, I could see them being buyers, obviously, but I mean, if you're, I just don't know what to do at this point or what to do with some of their players, because I want to throw this to you as well. Drake Batherson, your boy, he's been terrible recently.
Ghost.
He's been a ghost out there. And for guys who have, I think we've seen a couple of comments about dropping Drake Batherson and what to do. And you and I have kind of had his back. Like, don't wait a little bit.
Yeah.
it might be time to drop or try to trade Drake Batherson off your team.
Probably already there, Steele. And also, first of all, shout out to the latest comment on the latest episode. Just wanted to say shout out to listening to you guys every day has improved my English skills.
Loved it.
English wasn't my first language, so thank you. First non-related fantasy props. Shout out to F2D4H. We see you. We appreciate you. Didn't actually think the language we were bringing out here was fully English, but we really appreciate all the feedback from our listeners. Sidebar. Back to the Ottawa Senators. This team is really hard to put a finger on. You bring in Linus Ullmark. All of these narratives have been put Ottawa right at the top there with the Edmonton Oilers for you and I, by the way, to return to earlier in the episode. I don't know how to explain it, Steele, because at times, and Drake Batherson, I really do think is such a critical piece to this team's success that people overlook. And I'm not going to fully give up on him. Maybe this year it's time for a reset and yeah, you move off of him. I'm not giving up on him next year. Maybe that's one of those cases you can swoop in. He might fade next year because of this performance down the stretch. Let me just say this with the Ottawa Senators. These rumors starting to swirl, and I know they're very, very loose. I think I'm starting to buy into them. Brady Tkachuk, if this continues to go south, the rumors about him wanting to play in the States, wanting to play with his brother, whatever, I don't think this guy's going to hold out for too much longer. And I understand contracts are contracts, loyalty is whatever, and we ain't in that dressing room or in the media scrums. But if they keep kind of blowing really good opportunities with a really good young core that sooner than later, things will start to break apart here. Claude Giroux's not around for all the time, whatever. I don't know what the future holds for the Ottawa Senators. And right now, Steele, my finger's on the drop button for a number of these pieces not named Brady Tkachuk or Tim Stützle.
Yeah, I mean, it's just gone downhill for them. 5-game losing streak. And honestly, what kind of makes me more frustrated, I know they're both injured, but this both Matthew and Brady Tkachuk going on this
media tour
right now. They're on the podcast with the Kelsey brothers, Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah,
I mean, to me, it's a little bit bizarre. It's a little bit strange. Again, I get that they're injured, but after the Four Nations face-off, it's a little suspicious, if you ask me. A little suspicious.
A little dodgy.
I'm going to use Brady Tkachuk's words against him when he was talking about Quinn Hughes. Little sus, little suspicious. Let's get over to big time bets where the money is made. Lots of games over the weekend, Friday night as well. I got 3 picks. Over to you, my friend. Where are you looking first?
Same game parlay, and if you're good, we'll rattle this off because some of us got big time anniversary dinners to get to. Shout out to you, kid. Congratulations to you and your lady friend. You know I love you guys. Hope you have a delicious dinner. If I had a little bit more money in the pocketbook after this parlay bangs, maybe I'll send you a retroactive check for the bill. No apps, though. No apps. No, I'm kidding. Here we go. Same game parlay. I'm not backing down. I'm going right into the Toronto Maple Leafs New York Rangers game, the juiciest one on the board for obvious reasons for us. Quick time, over 5.5. 6 of Toronto's last 6 games. I'm taking it down to 5.5. I see it at 6 right now, Steele. Not feeling that. 4 of the last 8 games between these two have gone over, so it's a very even 50-50 split, but the last 3 games have produced 20 goals. So I'm kind of feeling the over. We know they're also, missing Adam Fox. We know that the Rangers have been involved in a bunch of high-scoring games themselves, over 5.5, along with Leafs on the money line because I'm feeling the juice here. The Rangers, I know, 3 straight games. I really do think this Adam Fox glue kind of loss is going to be huge. Sorry, they've won 3 of their last 4, but they beat Pittsburgh, Columbus, and the Islanders. Not buying into it. So Leafs money line over 5.5, and by far my favorite pick and lock of the night. Somebody throw some respect on Mitchie Marner's name right now and real quick, because not only am I very concerned about this player, let's talk about it because Mitch is not the time. I don't think he's coming back to the Leafs deal. I think he's gonzo. We'll talk about it another time. But for now, I'm going to soak it up for as much as that I got. I've never seen him play with the confidence that he has right now. And that's bad news for opponents because he is so skillfully gifted in the offensive end. And right now he's wreaking havoc. He's going to get back to what he does best, and that's create. Give me the Mitch Marner anytime assist as my lock of the night. In his career against the New York Rangers, 12 apples in 21 games. I'm liking my odds and my chances with this one. I think Mitch is going to be in for another couple of big games here. Those are the 3 picks, same game parlay.
And that's going to go well with my player prop from this game. I don't have a same game parlay, but I might have to make one, include that over 5.5, which I absolutely love as well.
Thank you.
I also have the Maple Leafs on the money line against the Rangers. They're 5-4-1 in their last 10 against New York. 3 big wins for the Leafs after the Four Nations face-off: Boston Bruins, Carolina, Chicago. Like you said, same thing for the New York Rangers against lesser competitive opponents right there. I'm not buying into it as well. Also, like you said, Adam Fox, also JT Miller injured. He could miss the game against the Toronto Maple Leafs as well. So that goes in our favor. Maple Leafs on the money line, my first pick. Second pick, Austin Matthews anytime goal. That's what goes well with that player prop of Mitch Marner. It has been a long time that I have seen Austin Matthews score on a goalie. He hasn't scored on a goalie in 10 games. He got an empty netter in that Carolina matchup, 6-3 win after the break. But it's been a long time. I don't think he's scored. He didn't score any goals in the Four Nations face-off for Team USA. He's hit, I can't even count. I'm going to need your hands and a few extra hands to count how many posts and crossbars he's hit.
Steele, you know I can't count, so just you're on your own.
We might need some help there.
Need the abacus.
It's not for a lack of trying, not for a lack of opportunities. He's just not getting the luck. He's not getting the bounce right now. He's still firing the puck. I think he gets one in this game against one of the best goaltenders in Igor Shesterkin. Lock of the night for me, Avalanche on the puck line against the Minnesota Wild.
He's back.
They're 7-3-0 in their last 10 against Minnesota. 6 of those wins have been by 2 or more goals. And without Joel Eriksson, without Kirill Kaprizov, I really do think the Minnesota Wild are going to struggle against some of these top-tier teams, especially division rival Colorado Avalanche, who are trying to claw their way in to a top 3 spot. I don't like this for the Minnesota Wild on Friday night. That's my lock of the night for Friday.
2 things. Whenever you tell me a pick that's a lock of the night about the Minnesota Wild, I'm going to listen. 2, if you're telling me a lock of the night that's against the Minnesota Wild, I'm definitely listening. Giddy up. That's going into mine. Make it a little parlay special. 4 picks. Let's get it.
Get it over the weekend. Big time bets. Lock of the nights. That's where you find us on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod. Thank you so much for making it your first listen every single day. For your second listen, you got to check out the Locked On NHL podcast, where the season never ends. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. From your boys here, Flip Livingstone and Steele Roden, we wish you good luck with those weekly matchups, those big time bets. Let us know how you do over the weekend, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.